is every mind-blowing experiment that you can do in Minecraft. And hey, YouTube's told me that no one's ever subscribed to the channel upside down. So either turn your screen upside down or turn yourself upside down and aim for that white sub button above. It's free and it helps out a ton. If we're to set up one of our portals bigger than the other end of the entrance, then when we go through, we will be teleported to our other destination, except you'll get bigger every time. And so if we take this to its logical extreme, we can get incredibly huge until we're basically rivaling the giant zombie. Although we're able to do a lot more. I'm thankful for that. Except they have 100 points of health and we only have 20, so I think we still got kind of a raw deal here. If we were to take our portal blocks and then make a box of them like so, then when we light a couple of the sides, you'll notice that the world appears sideways. And honestly, watching this in third person, you can tell that it's more than a little trippy. I mean, in one second we're walking through an entrance, and then another we're falling through the ceiling. But if you want a more open floor plan, it's hard to argue with the results. You just might also be getting an open ceiling and wall plan. Everything's basically the same at this point. And if you really want to make your build feel as big as feasibly possible, then this is a simple way to do that. Since if we connect our portals in such a way where this one loops into the one behind it, then when you run through, we've got an infinite loop. Now it's hard to tell if we're chasing ourselves or if they're chasing us. And where this can really start to mess with your head is if you start looking around in the other directions that you lit. And honestly, if you build one of these out in the open like we did initially here, it's amazing how weird it looks there too. Like we've got an infinite tunnel digging into this mountain when we all know that there's nothing there. We didn't build that. But it does give you the perfect place for a Scooby-Doo haul chase, and I think that's pretty fun. This might look like a pretty mediocre base with an even more mediocre door, but the truth is anything but, since when we open it up and step inside, we'll find that we've created this entire massive base in a completely different cyberspace. And really, when you see one of these examples with the Immersive Portals mod, it does not take a stretch of the imagination to picture the kind of TARDIS that you could make with this. It is pretty cool, and it makes me wish we could connect portals like this in the base game. This here might look like a stick, but it's actually facing the other way. And the reason for that is that this is actually a new item called Create 5 Connected Rooms Around You. Kind of a mouthful of a name, but when you use it, it'll create 5 randomly generated rooms that you can walk through. So when you go inside, it looks to be a burning fire hazard of campfires. Let's swirl around this way, and now we're into mud blocks. And keep going through this spiral staircase, and we'll work our way up to quartz, all the way up to banners, and then just fall through the floor. Yeah, the randomly generated part doesn't mean that these are always walkable, but it's more than a little mind-bending to do this loop. And hey, if we're gonna run around in a treadmill, at least we're making it an interesting one. By using a flint and steel on glass, we're able to make it into a mirror in this mod. And that's not where we have to stop, since if you were to then use those new mirrors in conjunction with the immersive portals, then we could see ourselves in the mirror and then walk through it to appear on the other side, leaving us and any friends who happen to watch more than a little confused. But as Neil deGrasse Tyson will tell you, you're able to kiss yourself in a mirror, just only on the lips. And here that's true until it isn't and we disappear. And just like we became a giant, we can also go the other way around. If we continue to wrap through these portals in the opposite direction, we can get ourselves down to an incredibly small size. And what I think is so funny about this is that we actually interact with things very different here. Like for us, falling off of a carpet wouldn't be that bad in regular size. But when you get this small, it's the equivalent of falling off of a 5-story building. And the portals aren't just good for changing our size, since dropping any kind of mob or entity through, we can make them both jumbo sized and teeny tiny. And honestly, I don't know what's scarier, a creeper that's the size of a skyscraper, or one that's so small that you can't even see it until it explodes. I'll let you decide. I usually don't think of experience orbs as entities, but after this experiment, you'll think of them as monsters. Since by throwing a bottle of enchanting through one of these portals, we can have the experience orbs that it's dropping become bigger and bigger in size, until eventually, as we can see from Theo Monty, these could become some of the largest entities that you've ever seen. And at this point, it looks more like a giant slime than a giant XP orb. But unfortunately, even if you collect it, it still gives you the regular amount of experience. But if that bums you out, no worries, since we could also shrink them down through that same system until eventually you just can't even see them. You're just gaining experience for nothing, which I think is kind of funny. Here we've got an illusion where this block looks much larger through this portal than it should ever have any right being. And this isn't through the block display command or anything like that, it's just through these portals that we have here. Since if you link together one small and one large portal, then we can place blocks behind the portal and replace the frame, so the blocks that we place through will either look really small on one side or incredibly huge on the other. So the grass might not always be greener on the other side, but it definitely is bigger through this. And if we were to use that same trick, if we spawn a mob inside of the smaller portal, then when we go over to the larger one, they'll always look larger, essentially giving you a magnifying glass to look closely at any mobs. But I'll be honest, I've never wanted to look this close at anyone, let alone a mob. But You can get a nice look at their pixels. If we were to use this command, then we're able to take a perfectly square portal and make it into a pretty convincing circle. And now it looks a lot less like a nether portal and a lot more like one that was made by Dr. Strange. And strange is the right word. I think there's no reason for a circle to ever be in Minecraft. Sorry, Mr. Cat. Just looks weird. When we ignite this TNT, it's gonna explode, but not in the way that you expected it to. Since with the help of a repeating command block, we have it so that any TNT that gets ignited will immediately go up to this huge size, which I've gotta say is pretty terrifying. If my friend put a trap like this down and all of a sudden I'm seeing this giant TNT balloon up, yeah, there's probably not a word for how fast I'd want to run away. There would be a skip-shaped hole in whatever wall is all I'm saying. And then if we partner this with the summon TNT command to summon a prime TNT, then we can use that giant TNT for an instant explosion. Good luck surviving that. Minecraft held items haven't always made a lot of sense. Like, why is it when I hold these nether sprouts items, they're floating in my hand instead of, you know, holding in my hand? And here we're gonna make that example look basically normal. Since using this command that you see on screen, we're able to change the size of any held item that we have in our hand. So while we both might have a diamond sword, I think we all can agree that that's not a knife. Now that's a knife. And now the only thing you have to worry about is people thinking that you're compensating, which, next point. Using the rotation sticks, we're able to position the world in any orientation that we want inside of the portal, which if we use it like this, can basically let us have our own security camera to watch our surroundings. Which is cool, but I do get scared that while I'm cycling through this, I'm gonna see like Golden Freddy sitting down there once. Let me give you all a house tour. Now I know this doesn't look like much, it's literally just a door, but open it up inside and I think you'll see that I got some pretty good real estate. And as Mountain T144 laid out here, we're able to store our entire house within this door, which is more than a little impressive and more than a little confusing. It's the best of both, we can say. If you were to break bedrock in the overworld, you're probably not expecting to find much. A one-way trip into the void, and that's usually it. Good for a trap, but not much else. But with the help of immersive portals, there's actually an option where we can do something called dimension stacking. And there you'll find something that looks a lot more like the underworld underneath our world. And honestly, I just think this looks so cool. I wouldn't mind if it was in the base game. I mean, breaking bedrock's been in the game through so many updates, it practically feels like a feature instead of a glitch. So being treated as some kind of reward like this where you fall into the nether below you, I think that's pretty cool. And with the way that this has it, you could add in any dimension that's available in Minecraft, having it set to being above or below you. It's really neat when you start to experiment with it. Now, if we step inside this blue pathway, it doesn't seem that interesting. I mean, maybe a little ominous just being confined in a space like this, but nothing to hold against it. But when you turn back because there's nothing in front of you, that's when you're finding out that it's not actually a blue pathway you've been walking on, but rather the pathway changes colors. And the way we do this is by building nearly identical hallways, but then having immersive portals in between them at certain points. And so if you look back at the right point, you might find that you've been walking on a red pathway this whole time, but turn back later and it turns out it was just blue. Yeah, trying to understand the physics of this is a little tough to get your head around. But if you're looking for my advice, if you have the choice between blue or red, always pick red. If we mess around with the config settings for the Immersive Portals mod, then we can change it so that the end portal that we find in the stronghold will actually show us a scaled view of what we're going to see on the other side. And you'll see as much when you put in all the Eyes of Ender, giving us basically a diorama of the end portal to look at. And it gets even more trippy when you jump in and then you seamlessly enter through the portal. At that point, what looked to be like we're jumping into a hologram actually turns out that we're falling directly into the end fight, which can easily throw off your head for scale. So if I had the choice for fighting the Ender Dragon on this small display, I think I'd be able to beat it faster than most speedruns. One bed and you're done. By using this command to change the scale of our projectiles, you can see that when we get ready to shoot an arrow from our bow, it's going to be a lot larger than the bow that we even used to shoot it. And to me, this is hilarious. I mean, if you only had one in the chamber, you'd at least hope that it's one of these. That seems like it would get the job done. And seeing this done with all the different projectiles in Minecraft, it gets pretty funny. Plus, we can even have it go the other way, giving us teeny tiny projectiles that we can shoot out. I mean, I've heard of a pea shooter, but I've never heard of a pea-sized shooter. That's just brutal. And I think it's very funny when you see this done with tridents as well. We don't think of those as projectiles, but now we might think of them as forks on the ground. But hey, if you come to a fork in the road, I guess you can pick it up. If you look on YouTube, you'll find numerous different hardcore YouTubers who have transformed the structures that you've been able to find. And usually that's making them bigger, but here we can make them a whole lot smaller, which I honestly think is pretty neat. And just by using certain commands that you'll find on screen, we can turn what would have been a woodland mansion into a woodland dollhouse. But if you're looking for the kind of things to decorate your house with, this could make for a pretty cute cute build hack. Just make sure the people inside of the structure also don't mind being miniaturized. As if the portals in this mod weren't already confusing enough, we can make them so much worse, since they're not just confined to the regular squares and rectangles that we see in Minecraft, but they can also be turned into curves, causing them to loop you inside of circles like this. So even though it appears that we're moving forward, we're really just stuck in time. And if this is the kind of sacrifices we have to make to see circles in Minecraft, I think it's not worth it. My brain can't take it. Minecraft paintings have always been terrible for hiding secret entrances, but if we take after Dunk Zero, we might be able to have a better way to use them, since here the idea is using immersive portals to tuck actual portals to different realms inside of your friend's paintings. So what they think is just a cute picture is actually anything but. But hey, in my eyes, it just makes the game a lot more like Mario 64. Jump through the portal, you're gonna end up in a new level. I think there's something kind of sweet to that, if not a little intimidating when it starts to get out of hand. Instead of building a volcano in your next Minecraft world, you should really just build a portal, since that's what user Potato Boy did on Reddit and got the exact same effect. Now, thanks to the Immersive Portals mod, if you set up a portal on the other side of the nether, then when you glance through the top of our so-called volcano, you'll be glancing straight into the fire and the flames. And with shaders like they're using here, the effect gets even better. And hey, sacrificing people in the nether is gonna be even better at getting the job done than some volcano would. So get ready for a bountiful harvest this year. Let's take a look at this confusing display, since from this angle, we just have a dirt block floating in a room. But it gets even weirder when we step to this side. Not only does the wall that should have been here disappear, but now our dirt blocks turn into copper. And then with another rotation, our copper turns into gold. And honestly, I think we have this alchemy thing figured out. Then finally, we could walk around to the last remaining wall and see that the gold turned into diamond. And I'll say that if this was a multiple choice test, I think the answer's pretty easy. Or it would have been, but in our case, it ends up being all of the above. Or rather, that you should go above and then go through the roof, since that's where you get the netherite block. Or that sometimes you just need to look at something from a different point of view to end up getting the best return. By looking into this hole, we've got ourselves a perfect cow spying machine. And best yet, the cow's none the wiser. And the way that we make this happen is having an immersive portal tied up together with a repeating command block, so that it's constantly teleporting our portal directly over an entity that we want to watch. And the original poster on Reddit has an even more helpful set of rules that you can see here on screen. Make the portal, name it with the command, and then with a repeating always active command block, you have it constantly teleport the portal entity above whatever entity that you want it to follow, giving us the perfect crystal ball to spy on your friends or your enemies. I won't judge. You ever wonder how hamsters are able to run in those balls for hours? Yeah, I know, I don't get it either. I also don't get anyone who's able to run, period. But after looking at this illusion by Rock and X10, I can at least see some of the fun to it. At first look, this seems like a pretty cramped hallway, but halfway through, we're walking through an immersive portal so that we're not actually walking to the other side of the hallway, but rather falling into it, until eventually we have this repeating circle illusion. And you might not want to eat before you try this one. It can get a little disconcerting, but come on, it's still pretty cool. This illusion feels straight out of an MC Escher painting, because when you look at the walls, you'll see that the stairs somewhat defy gravity, and it's hard to tell which one of these is actually going in the right direction. And if you're not careful with this one, you'll find that it's pretty good at disorienting you. Though I guess if you were to use something like the up and down and all around mod, at that point gravity doesn't matter either, so you'd be able to walk into any of these doors just fine. Complex doors are a staple of the redstone community, but while Mumbo can show you how to make 40 of those in a couple minutes, I bet you won't see one of these too often. And folks, your eyes don't deceive you. This is built entirely within vanilla Minecraft, albeit it did take the creator around 1200 command blocks to build, but the result of which is still pretty special. And honestly, I wouldn't even know where to start building one of these. But luckily, this smooth animation is something that we can all enjoy through the world download. Minecraft has blocks and it has mobs, and oftentimes you don't see the two sides mix, but that changes today, since with the help of cleverly coded falling sand entities and armor stands, this Reddit user was capable of animating a proper functional jumping piston mob. And folks, this isn't done with any mods or resource packs, but in fact, it's fully possible using just command blocks or data pack in vanilla, and the results are equal parts ridiculous and impressive to see. And honestly, this just feels like a Pixar reference waiting to happen. Minecraft's a world made of blocks. Not circles, not triangles, but blocks. Which is great, but it makes a site like this look even more cursed. Though while this might seem like some wacky mod, it's actually all possible within vanilla. As the Minecraft genius Seth Bling shows, using a mixture of invisible shulkers and armor stands, we can create a fairly convincing 45-degree slope in our world. And while some of the blocks like diamond ore don't work quite right, it is still impressive to see just how much is possible here, even if it does feel illegal to watch. Clearly, command blocks are capable of some pretty wild things, but what this user pulls off feels like an act of science fiction. See, what's happening here is that the machine can scan the blocks within the area, assign them to a particle, and then recreate a copy down below. Meaning you only have to build one big statue and you get a little souvenir for the same effort. And even better, it'll even rotate for a proper display, which I've got to say is a lot more exciting than just another static statue. A TNT explosion can pack quite a punch. But while that's already true, we can dial it up a notch. So what if instead of just destroying the blocks, it also launched the debris? Well, the results can get pretty ridiculous, and it makes blowing up your friend's base even more gratifying. So if you're looking to cause some proper chaos on the server, this is a solid option for sure. Just make sure your computer's strong enough to handle it. Otherwise, that house won't be the only thing that's going up in smoke. Now, whether you call this GIF or GIF, chances are we've all seen them. And while they're commonplace, in Minecraft, they're a lot more rare, which makes this item frame a real sight to see. Though what's crazier still is that this is all done without using any mods, meaning we can not only play these animations within our world, but we can also record some of our own as well. And while I wouldn't use this to record your next hardcore Let's Play, it's still an amazing feat of Minecraft engineering, and it offers up some hilarious gags as well. By this point, we've all seen the Easter egg for naming a mob dinner bone, but this time, instead of just turning the mob upside down, it also changed the gravity to boot, which is definitely a wild sight. And yet, it's also surprisingly simple to pull off. See, all that's happening here is that we have a repeating command block that constantly checks for any mobs named Dinnerbone, and then when it finds one, it applies the levitation effect, and poof, they're off just like that, giving us quite the harmless prank to use next time your friend's online. If you look at a sheep, it doesn't seem like the smartest of mobs, but what if I told you that these things are actually masters of disguise? Or at least they will be. See, by setting up the command blocks that we have here, our sheep turn from mindless mobs into proper chameleons, being able to blend in with their surroundings like so. And while they probably don't run across colors this vibrant in the wild, it is still cool to see this effect in action. And honestly, it's a lot more unique than just yet another sheep named Jeb. Parkour is a pretty straightforward concept. You have a goal and you have to jump to get there. I mean, it's not rocket science. But to spice up that idea, we need to talk about parallel universes. Or more specifically, using command blocks to jump between two realities like so. See, as it's laid out, we not only have to make sure where we land our jump, but also switch to the right clock to make the blocks appear. And if you ask me, that really takes your jumping puzzle to another level, literally. Building a house is a tale as old as time in Minecraft, but having the game build a house for you is a bit more exciting. That's why this display of a house built entirely of falling blocks is so wild to see. What's happening here is that we have a command block array perfectly timed to launch each and every block into its respective place, until it finally gives us our finished result. And full disclosure, for this to work, you will need a flat surface. Otherwise, those building blocks will just collide with one another and fall right off course. Sometimes, when you're fighting a creeper, it's bound to explode, which is fine, accidents happen, but it's no treat having to fill in the newly exposed creeper hole by yourself. So instead, wouldn't it be nice if the world just did it for you? Well, that's not as crazy as it sounds. See, the idea here is that any creeper explosion is fully repaired like so, even including chests filled with items, which in my eyes is a lot more interesting than just setting the mob griefing game rule to false. And it definitely looks cooler. Shulkers are an invaluable item to have when it comes to storing your stuff, but what if they could store more than just items? Well, that's the idea behind this community-made Mega Shulker concept. Here, we can store a fully fledged build inside something like a structure block and place it wherever we'd like. And hey, we can even store mobs inside like so, giving us a lot more freedom than just some measly 27 slots. So the next time you're looking to move house, why not just actually move the house instead of just the stuff inside? Since the early days of Minecraft mod reviews, one of the fan favorites had to be the portal gun, which is why, at least for me, it's a relief to finally have this possible in vanilla. See, by copy and pasting this, let's face it, ridiculously sized command, and we've got it fully set up to let us experience the portal gun right out of the game, letting us create the orange and blue portals that we're used to, and do so without having to type out all these command blocks ourselves. And that's a welcome mix for sure. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?